Well, hi everyone, this is Dr. Schroeder with this week's video introduction to week number 5 of our course in healthcare research. Last week was having some issues just getting my videos uploaded, so apologize there wasn't a video introduction last week. In week number 4, the primary task, of course, was to review this Aiken study. This is the study of nurse burnout and patient outcomes and nurse staffing in the state of Pennsylvania. Um, this is a very widely quoted and widely cited article, fairly much a seminal study in this concept and topic of nurse burnout. And a few things to point out. Um, of course, many of you had wondered if this particular study, the researchers didn't, I think a couple of you had mentioned and had commented on, maybe gone a little bit too much, like they had swallowed up so much data that it was really hard to make real true heads or tails of it. And one thing to keep in mind is that in a study of this sort, really the researchers were not really trying to find cause and effect necessarily in this particular study. This is a cross-sectional study, which means that the study was done over a limited period of time, or at least the data was collected from a limited period of time, and was a humongous amount of data. Roughly 25% of the nurses in the state of Pennsylvania participated in this study, which is a very large, it's just a lot of data. It's a lot of data to muddle through. And so the researchers were able to come up with a lot of, I think, what can best be described as baseline data about patient burnout and about what outcomes are like in the state, or at least in the state at that particular time during the time of the study. Because it's a cross-sectional study, though, the data is limited in the sense that you can't really use it to determine any cause-effect relationships. You can see that there is a correlation between data here, between nurse burnout, and so you can make certain inferences, but you can't really use that data to necessarily really support anything. And that's the point of this study, just trying to see, to get this baseline so that other studies could be done that would be either more longitudinal studies or regression type studies where you could actually limit the data a little bit, go into specific hospitals and talk with specific nurses, use this study as a way of comparing to see if in a smaller study, if you were to use maybe just 2 or 3 hospitals with a much smaller number of nurses, would the data be consistent? And so with that, you can use future studies to determine if there was cause and effect. That's really what the point of this study was. So, but the important takeaway here was really understanding how a cross-sectional study works and to see how data can be used to generate other new studies. And that's really one important thing to keep in mind about nursing research studies. Rarely does a nurse researcher develop a study that is meant to be like the end-all of the topic. A lot of times you do a study to see if you can come up with new questions, and that was really the goal here. They were Aiken and the researchers were very careful to describe that they weren't trying to make any specific real conclusions here, other than to say that there were certain ideas that were suggested by the study. That was the idea. That's all that they were really trying to do. Future studies will then determine, and future studies later did determine, the correlation between nurse burnout and patient staffing. And so kind of an interesting study that way. Also, to go back to week 3, going back to the point of significance, and of course in week 3, we were still looking at the Kolkaba and the Beck studies back then. And some of you had mentioned that there was a questionable link, or you thought that there might be a questionable link to nursing significance. Again, an important topic to keep in mind is that significance does not have to be explicitly stated. And all that significance means is that, is the information significant for nurses? And in the Beck study, I think that it's pretty clear that it really was, even though there wasn't any cause effect that was looked at, even though there really wasn't an effort made to try to determine if the women in the study really truly had PTSD. This is all self-reported data, but again, that was kind of the idea, was to see what is this these women's lived experiences. Nurses were termed clinicians through most of the study, and that's very common with a lot of studies, and that's because Beck, in this particular study, was trying to come up with data that could be useful not only to nurses, but anybody working with that particular population. Again, looking at the study in more of a multidisciplinary approach. So a very good discussion. I've been really impressed and have enjoyed participating in the discussions. I hope that my responses have been helpful. This week, jumping ahead to week 5, we start to look at the concept of study populations and study samples. And so I will leave you to your reading, and I will be following up in the discussion questions, helping to add clarity when required or when appropriate, to help describe what is meant by, or how to determine, is a study, how do we know what the correct population is? Is the study sample adequate? Is the study sample appropriate to determine a generalizability to a larger population? So everybody has made it through the midterm exam, I see. Congratulations, everybody has made it through that. We're past the halfway point now, so we're kind of on the downhill stretch. Also this week you have your quantitative critiques are due. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to let me know. I look forward to participating in class with you once again. The discussions have been excellent. I look forward to more great discussion this week, and I'll see you in the discussion forums.